love and control are not the same thing, which now seems obvious, but that was a realization that I had, I want to say when I was maybe 23, 24 years old. And it was a shocking realization to have. I still remember exactly where I was and what I was doing. It was kind of one of those really powerful aha moments that explained a lot of my childhood and a lot of my struggles early on in my relationship. When you grow up with a narcissistic parent, I think narcissists in general, one of the hallmark characteristics of them, at least in the research that I have done, is control. They want to be the center of attention. They have this sort of superiority complex, and they always want to feel like they have the upper hand, like they are in a position of control. I don't think they ever want to feel like they give anyone else the opportunity to control them. And that was very much the case for me throughout my experience growing up. My narcissistic parent was incredibly controlling, and I didn't even know how controlling they were for a very long time. Because again, I think one of the things that children of narcissistic parents lack, which is one of the most important things in understanding the situation that you're in, is perspective. And for me, I was very sheltered. I didn't have a very close circle of friends until I was in high school. I was very rarely, if ever, encouraged to hang out with peers of mine, never really witnessed a healthy parent-child relationship because it wasn't like I was going over people's houses and hanging out for extended periods of time. And I think when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, they encourage you and sort of pressure you to never talk about things that go on within the family. What happens in this house stays in this house. And it's kind of something like you take pride in, where it's like family issues stay within the family. You don't want to smear your family's name or talk negatively about your family members to other people because that doesn't look good, right? And I understand to a certain extent keeping more sensitive subjects a little bit closer to home. That's fine. But I think when you pressure a kid to not talk about anything ever that goes on behind closed doors, what you're doing is just creating an environment where the abuse can continue and can go unnoticed. And I think a lot of us would have benefited from speaking a bit more openly about what was actually happening, because that might have raised some concerns to other adults or family members in our lives. And yet we're encouraged to not talk about it. And not only that, but I don't think outside opinions are really welcomed when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent. They're very concerned with the image. And again, they have this superiority complex where, I know best. My opinion is the only one that matters. And most people think the way that I do, probably. And if they don't, they should. And so I think that's one of the many reasons why it's easy for a narcissistic parent to maintain control over their children, over their partner, over the family unit as a whole. And so I remember early on in my relationship, my first ever serious romantic relationship, which just so happened to be with my husband, my now husband. I remember going to him and telling him, I'm going to go out with a couple of friends of mine. And he would just say, oh, okay, great, have fun. And I remember in those moments feeling kind of devastated, feeling like he didn't care about me because he didn't want to come with me, feeling like he didn't love me because he wasn't so overly protective that he would inject himself into that experience. And I almost wanted him in the moment to at least express in some way that he would have rather had me stay with him than go out and see my friends and have fun on my own, independently. Because never before in my life had someone that I wanted to receive love and attention and affection from, never did they foster any kind of independence in me. It was always the opposite. And so it took me a long time to get used to someone in my life that I care about, who I want to care about me also, sort of encouraging me to be independent or being okay with me doing things on my own without them, not interpreting that as not caring or not loving me, and actually taking that as a positive, healthy thing. It's still something that I struggle with. And I remember sort of having that realization where, it made me reflect on my experience growing up, especially my teenage years, because that, like I said, was when I first found sort of a group of friends that I would actually hang out with outside of school. Before that, I think the first time I hung out with kids my age outside of school was probably the 4th grade. And I just remember reflecting on those experiences, and any time I wanted to go out anywhere, I would get borderline interrogated by my parent. Where are you going? Who are you going with? What time are you going to be home? More often than not, there would be some kind of guilt tripping involved, where it always seemed more beneficial or more positive for me to stay home. Like that was always the right decision, that any free time that I had, I should spend at home with my family doing family things. Why would I want to be anywhere else, right? That was kind of the mentality. And so a lot of questions would be asked, and there were a number of times when I would leave the house in tears because just asking to go out and it ultimately ending up in a decision where I was allowed to, before I actually ended up leaving the house, I would get yelled at. There was just this entire process that I kind of had to go through to just see my friends on a Friday night. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together in terms of how unhealthy that was. I think it was a way to just have me associate doing anything outside of my family as a bit more negative, to kind of make me feel bad, like I was a bad person for developing relationships outside of my immediate family or wanting to do anything on my own. And maybe, I don't know, encourage me in the future to do those things less and less. But I think it's human nature, especially as you enter into your late teens and early adulthood, to want to spread your wings. And, you have new friends and you're experiencing things for the first time. You want to get out into the world. And I think that's completely normal and healthy. And most parents, I would imagine, would encourage that in their kids. But mine didn't. It was very much the opposite. And I never thought to question, I guess, the integrity of my relationship with my parent. I never thought that it was rooted in control or manipulation or anything unhealthy until I was out of that environment and I got some perspective of what healthy relationships look like. And so for the first 2 decades of my life, I thought that the person, naturally you just think it's sort of goes without question. Oh, of course my parents love me. They love me unconditionally because that's what they're supposed to do. But if you don't have any perspective, you don't necessarily know what actual unconditional love feels like. And so to think that, oh yeah, I'm loved by this person, and this is also the way that they're treating me, so that must mean that that's how they show love, that's how they show care. And it was really foreign to me when I would say things like that to my husband, and he would come back at me with something very different than my parent ever did. And it was strange. And I remember kind of just having that epiphany, like, wow, love and control are not the same thing. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I am not a professional. I don't claim to be one, but a therapist once told me that I am an expert in my own experience. And I want to speak about these topics candidly so that anyone who has experienced or is currently experiencing something like it knows a little bit more about what to expect, how to respond, and that you're not alone.